Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us on this Friday, another TrueAllele user webinar. Today we will have the privilege of having one of our TrueAllele users, Dr. Nasir Butt, present for us. So just to get started, I just have a couple slides here just to introduce, and then I will turn it over to Nasir. Dr. Nasir Butt is the DNA Technical Manager and Supervisor at the Cuyahoga County Regional Forensics Science Laboratory. If you don't know where Cuyahoga County is, it's the county that Cleveland is in Ohio. So we've been working with them for a long time now. Back in 2020, we actually published what is still at this point our highest number of contributor mixture, which is validating TrueAllele interpretation of DNA mixtures containing up to 10 unknown contributors in JFS. That year was actually chosen as one of the noteworthy articles because it was a PG system going up to 10. And he will talk about his workflow, his usage, how they came on board with TrueAllele, and all sorts of details today. But just to kind of introduce it, they are currently, as far as I'm aware, processing all of their cases through TrueAllele. They have reported on a case of up to 6 contributors, and they also make extensive use of the TrueAllele database. They were doing both EVI to ref searches, EVI to EVI, and I believe they're also using it for contamination checking. So they're a really good example. And actually, a lot of times when we have like people that are investigating the system, we would recommend they talk to Nasir because they really do make full use of our system. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Butt, who will take it away from here. So Nasir, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Matt. Thank you so much for this introduction. So, as Matt mentioned last webinar too, he talked about the validations that we performed along with cybergenetics, and then we did independent study on our validations too. So, I will talk about from that point onward how our journey to TrueAllele started and how we are using this in our day-to-day work, casework. So before starting TrueAllele in our lab, we were doing the manual interpretation of our data. We had simple RMP methods for the major and single source samples. We were doing CPI for our binary interpretation, where we were not interpreting anything above 3 contributors. And most of the time, if we see degradation in the data, or we were not certain if this profile goes anywhere, so we will simply say it's inconclusive. That was prior to 2017, because in 2015, we went through PG purchase, and then we chose TrueAllele as our system. When we chose, we had TrueAllele purchase. We took 2 years to understand different methods and theories. We attended the workshop that cybergenetics they provided. That was 3-day workshop initially, and then all of our working analysts they participated in that and got certification, and they had to go through 2 of those courses. That's kind of it says. Operator 1 and Operator 2. Operator 2 is more advanced course that we took that gave us some understanding of the mixtures, how to deal with different situations in that data. But that was not enough, because unless or until we tested the system ourselves, we had to perform different combinations on our hands, on our server. Everybody went through that competency testing. We made mixtures of different proportions in-house, and then everybody had to go through those and get trained on the mixtures interpretation. Then we started implementation on using TrueAllele in our casework in January of 2017, and that After that, we started educating our customers. We had prosecutors sessions. I actually went in, did one CLE session with the judges, and then we invited defense attorneys too. We have a public defender office where we invited all of them and different detectives dealing with our reports. Um, we educated them the way we are going to change our reporting methods in DNA, and then what this means for the our reports moving forward. That was a big task, because that if we do all this good stuff and then they don't understand in courts, or the judges they don't understand, we had a lot of hurdles too. We went through 3 Daubert hearings. We had one before 2015 when we had done some testing on a case, and then cybergenetics was involved for for the interpretation of the minor DNA. That went through the Daubert hearing in our courts in Cuyahoga. After that, we had 2 other cases. Once we implemented in 2017, um, we went through the Daubert hearing. And time to time, we still hear from some defense attorneys that, we are pushing it for Daubert. And then I think our courts now understand Daubert is not that is required for TrueAllele in Cleveland, but you never know. One of the judges may just kind of go through again. I'm not going to go into that legalities of the proceedings in the courts, how we can overcome these Dauberts, and they have to appeal. Once they appeal, then kind of it's a kind of done deal that they have not appealed in the court. So how we did our validation studies. Initially, we designed mixtures where we had mixtures from 2 to 10 unknown contributors. These were randomly designed mixtures in a realistic composition without knowing how many cells are going to be there, because Mark designed this for us. There might be a half a cell, 2 cells, 1 cell, 10 cells, 15 cells. We had duplicates of these mixtures, and then we did the independent analysis between cybergenetics and our lab. We tested the system for sensitivity, specificity, reproducibility. What we found uh, was that if there's more DNA, you have better matrix. If you have more contributor, you have less information. If you do more sampling, you get, again, better matrix, better LRs. And then it's not about how many people are in there. It is all about how many you observe in that contributor based on the number of alleles. Access contributors kind of, same results. So no matter how many times you run, you get the same contributor. And a true contributor is always in the mix, and it always comes back as positive. The conclusions were that it is sensitive enough, it is specific enough, and it's reproducible enough to kind of report these results. In addition, what we learned from this validation study was that it is not what we define, it is what the data dictates. What is the data that tells us the kind of what the outcome is going to be. So we learned the data dictates the results. It's not the assumptions, or it's not something that you say, hey, I don't know how to interpret these. So it's your data. If it is degraded, you have to use all the degraded options and then kind of get the best results. One thing more we learned was the peeling improves the outcome in competing genotypes. When I say competing genotypes, when there is a uncertainty between 2 genotypes which are close to each other. For example, if there are 2 people who are contributing 30% each or 20% each, or closer to that, or to equal number of contribution, then in that situation, if you know one contributor, you can peel that one contributor and then get the results out. Peeling is also very important in cases where we have biological relationships. For example, when there are family members involved, um, then you can start peeling each single one of them and then see who remains in there and who kind of gets into the negative LRs. In fact, we had many cases where we learned peeling is very important, where family members were involved, and then we would not know without TrueAllele if the particular member was part of that mix or not. So, uh, so this is what peeling does. If we have for example, 3.2 of the LR, then it jumps to 8.4 when we kind of, know the person in there. So it increases the matrix, it increases the value of the likelihood ratio. Another thing we learned, um, no matter how many contributors are there, our starting point is 25K because 25,000 cycles burn in and burn out are sufficient for any equation for the data that we use. We use Perflex Fusion, 23 markers, 5 die, and we have seen majority. I would say majority means majority of our 3 contributor, 4 contributor, um, um, good DNA with 25,000 cycles will resolve the mixture and then give you the same results, repeatable results. Anytime we see a condition that we have to apply, for example, if there's a degradation or there are more number of contributors, we just increase the number of cycles to 50 to 75 accordingly. But 25,000 cycles is a good starting and good ending point for majority of the cases where we see a good DNA. These validation studies, as Matt mentioned earlier, were published in the FS Journal of Forensic Sciences. This was the early edition of 2020. This came in 2019 late as an online copy. And this was a kind of joint combination between cybergenetics and our lab. And we still kind of, refer this publication as our kind of landmark. What we did for the TrueAllele training, as I mentioned earlier, we did the 3-day TrueAllele case for course training, science and software that was provided by Cybergenetics. We went through the operator 1, operator 2, and then we all took the exam. And in addition, we did our own competency testing, means we prepared samples in-house, and then everybody has to go through those and then make sure that we are getting the appropriate proportions in there. We implemented the system with different stages, in different stages. First, we did the simple operation. We pulled all the cases where we had inconclusive results um, due to number of contributors, because as I said, we were doing only up to 3 contributors, and then we were leaving everything inconclusive anytime we see a condition means more than 3 or a heavy degradation on the data. So we'll mark it as insufficient or inconclusive. So those were the samples we, when we implemented, started pulling those and starting to see what the data is going to look like. And then we slowly removed the manual interpretation and we started using TrueAllele, where the buccal swab was submitted in all those cases where we have to make a comparison. So this means our reports would have only PG analysis reported out. Slowly we started using database feature. What database feature of this TrueAllele does is that it compares all the cases that you have in TrueAllele to see if we have a likelihood ratio that will match or that will be comparable in another case. In other words, for example, let's say if you have a suspect lying in one case or a DNA that is unknown in one case, you can compare it to the other cases, and then the system will tell you with a click of a button. Then we started using TrueAllele for screening victims' contribution, because earlier we were just doing the manual interpretation of the victims. We were not reporting stats for the victims. For example, in homicide cases where we had fingernail swabs, or for the victims in sexual assaults cases where victim's DNA was found, we will simply say victim cannot be excluded. Now we do a screening run that is quick, so that we don't do any manual interpretation. If we get a positive likelihood ratio, then we say victim cannot be excluded. We still do not report victims' stats in our reports, but we do document in our case files. And then sometimes it is important to peel victim um, in competing genotypes. For example, if victim is in competition in DNA mixture with the suspect or with the unknown, in those situations, it is it is better to peel the victim because we know the genotypes of the victim. The other genotypes become clean, and then you can use those for the CODIS or for the search. We also use TrueAllele for our CODIS profiles. We've been using this for almost 3 to 4 years now. I think longer than that. We'll talk a little bit more on that. Currently, as I mentioned, we have 12 DNA analysts, one tech lead myself, and one DNA technician. We have capacity-wise, we have 548 Maxwells, 2 Quant Studios for quantification, and then we have 3 ProFlex dual thermocyclers, and then we have 2 of the 3500 genetic analyzers. For TrueAllele capacity, we have 60 parallel TrueAllele processors, and we achieved these through the years. Like initially, we had just 1 tower, and then we added 4 more towers um, uh, as we grew, as we see the need, as we had the more case for going through TrueAllele, as we see the capacity that we need to increase for the database feature. Current capacity for our work is we have on average homicide cases, on an average, we do 15 to 25 samples per case. In sexual assaults, we do 5 to 15 samples per case. And in non-fatal, we have a limitation of 2 to 10 samples per case. We do a total of, on average, 8 to 9,000 samples in a year. We process those. And then on an average, 125 DNA reports are issued every month. We use database feature to upload DNA to CODIS, and then we use database feature to compare different DNAs. All our interpretations are done using TrueAllele, intimate samples, and in between. So we do not do any manual interpretation. We do not report anything that we say, oh yeah, I can see this, or I have this in there. We use TrueAllele for that. So the way we approach TrueAllele is we go through the extraction, quant, amp, and do the genetic analyzer. We print out our electropherograms at 67 RFU. That is our analytical threshold for our data. This data is to check the quality of the data from 3500, to check if there is a migration issue, to check if there is a bleeding issue, dye bleeding, to check if there is any spike in the data. This is just a quality check of the data to make sure that the machine is producing right data. And then we take those electropherogram, print them PDF, make them part of the case file. And from that data, we start our estimation of number of contributors for each sample. Once we establish that how many number of contributor, and parallelly we run the whole gel, means let's say if we do in the batch casework. So once we have the full plate, maybe it had 48 samples, sometime it has 90 samples. So we upload the whole gel, running it through TrueAllele Analyzer. to the data module. So the data is available for individual request. At the same time, if there are many cases where we have intimate samples, we can do the screening of the victim by just pushing all the data or selected samples from that data. Maybe there are 15, 20, or 30 samples that we know are victim samples, like vaginal swabs, fingernail swabs, or some of the those swabs. You can run them all together in the database module in one go. They will be there to screen the victim. If we get the victims um, positive LR, then we can report that the victim cannot be excluded. And then at the same time, when we are making new requests for the evidence, we can include the victim as a peeling method in there for the individual request. And then we create separate requests that we upload in each case. That is how we approach the TrueAllele for our process. Um, how we review the data in TrueAllele, we check the control verification for the positive control, and all the expected known alleles are there for positive control. This is done before we upload the data in data module, and then also it is done by creating a request for the positive control with a minimum 500 cycles, burn in and burn out, so that we can compare a known positive control that is already in the database against this uh, positive control, which we run as an unknown, to make sure that all the alleles are called in, and then we have a likelihood ratio that is acceptable for that positive control. Then we do the genotype verification. That's this inferred genotype verification is done for the positive control as well as for the known samples. For example, if there's a reference that was run 500 cycles, and then we want to make sure that we are getting only one genotype combination, not in different probabilities. That happens when the peak height ratios are not concordant, means there's a imbalanced peak height ratios, then you will get different probabilities. For example, if you have 11, 12 at CSF marker, you might see three probabilities for 11, 12, 11, 11, 11, 12, or 12, 12. So in those situations, you may rerun your sample by either longer or shorter period, and to get the concordance for your data, or you can do the manual upload. And then for our unknowns, we do the histogram check. How we do it? By checking our standard deviation. That is basically what it is, that the sample has gone through enough cycle to explore the each chain. So if there is a stuck chain, that's we call, if you did not get enough of the standard deviation, this means your system was quick enough to give you the results, means your standard deviation is coming back as 0.001 or 0.01, or not 1%, not 2%, or not 3%. So we check the histogram chain and see if the sampling has been done on the unknown sample or the inferred genotype. And then the last checkpoint is the concordance between two independent runs. We run every sample twice, at least, to see if we are getting the good convergence value, mixture weights, and the genotype concordance. And we get the log LR values. You might have heard we have to have a two-band concordance between the log LRs. That is the kind of extent of our TrueAllele review. And then we check everything. These are checked in the report module. And then what we report out is the match table, a batch table against a known reference. And then we calculate the frequency for the positive associations. And we report those frequencies and make them a part of the case file. So let's jump on to our
function of the TrueAllele to use CODIS profile. Lately, I have seen a couple of publication presentations in our tech lead workshop just this week, and in the CODIS workshop, where we are talking about how to use these PG systems for CODIS profiles, and then how to use the PG system for the database searches. So far, TrueAllele is concerned, I think database and the CODIS profile upload is a part of the whole package. You do not need to have a separate system or separate program install or upload or do the software upgrade. What we look for CODIS profiles is KL value, the Kullback-Leibler value. And as per the definition that given in the TrueAllele manuals, it is the estimate of the genotype strength. The definition reads the KL stat determines the divergence of the inferred profile from the prior population distribution. So this means how far it sits from the population. So in simple words, how unique is your DNA? How unique is your inferred genotype? How separate it is from the population. So that value will give you a kind of confidence level that is it a part of the population or is it closer to the population? Means, is this a coincidental or is this far enough from the population that you can, if you compare against a known sample, that you will get a good log LR. So in other words, if you have a higher KL, that is 15, that's from the manual again, that indicates a more informative genotype and more separation from the population. When it is KL3 or less, that indicates it could be a coincidental. It's a less informative profile. So we based our CODIS upload on this value. That's the KL. So what we found that if you have a KL value of 13 or more with a cumulative genotype confidence level of 75%, so we bring our cumulative genotype confidence up to 75%. I know most of the manuals, they say in TrueAllele, I think when you use the view module to see if your profile is going to qualify for the CODIS upload, it gives you a 95% cumulative genotype confidence. But if you bring this confidence to 75%, what happens is you are going to gain for the majority of the alleles that a kind of confidence that you will see that in the database. So what I'm saying here is it filters out all the minor genotype combinations for your search. It gives you the most highlighted alleles or genotypes that you can search easily. What we found, if we have a KL value 13 or more in a mixed sample, that will at least qualify in MME using MME for SDIS upload. Even though you are going to get a mixture profile from this, but you may get upload this into SDIS. And higher the number you have, more likely you're going to get it to the NDIS or likewise. And we use the view module for this function. I'm going to talk about a case where TrueAllele made a big difference in the CODIS search. This was a case from 2011. This decedent, this is a young boy, not boy, but young man, who was found by girlfriend at home with a key to the residence. So decedent was found face down on the couch, fully clothed on July of 27, 2011. He was tied up by his ankles with a belt and duct tape. And his arms were also in front of his body and tied with a belt and duct tape, and possibly duct tape around the mouth. Long story short, we had item 29 that we took the swabs from the tape around the decedent's neck, wrist, and ankles taken. These were collected in 2016. We have done some studies back in 2011. We had some reports, DNA reports went out. But in 29, I'm going to focus on this item 29 that was collected in 2016. So this is the electrophotogram we had because in 2011, we had only PP16HS with 16 markers, and we did not have item 29. We had other items that we pursued, but this case was cold, came back on our door, and then we had to look at again. We said, okay, item 29, which is a continuous binding of the duct tape that went around his neck to the wrist and the ankle area. So we swabbed the inner side of the tape, and then we found this profile. In this profile, we can see clearly there is a major component, and then there are two other people. One may be kind of, a mid contributor, kind of, mid-level contribution, and one with a very low contribution, and one with a kind of, decent contribution. So in 2017, we had the TrueAllele, but we were not using this for CODIS upload. We were simply using this to kind of, infer the unknown genotypes and then see what is in there. So when we did, this is the manual that we did because we had the manual and parallel TrueAllele, but this was a mixture. This is the item 29. You can see clearly there's a mixture. And this is a victim. And we could see victim is a major contributor in this mixture. And then we deduced rest of the profile, which is not matching to the victim or not deducing victim's alleles. And then we put rest of the profile in CODIS in 2017. So we got no hits. So this was the upload that we did in 2017. It's a decent profile. I mean, I would expect a hit. But see here, we had the victim with log LR of 23%. And we had victim 60%, above 60%, 66%, or 60%, or 61%. But there's a second contributor, which is 25%, and the third contributor between 4 to 6%. So that is the TrueAllele back then we had, and we were not uploading anything. You can see the KL 21 and 22, but we missed it. And then case kind of went cold again. We had no CODIS hit. FBI jumped on the case. They kept on working on it. Okay, in 2025, we were approached again on this case. What more we can do? So we said, oh my gosh, let's look at the TrueAllele. What we missed this 21 and 22. So we pulled the profile. The difference between the old manual upload was only 3 mismatches, where CODIS was not giving us any match. This was the offender that very same night hit to the profile that we uploaded. The same night we had the name coming back to us that this is a guy who is matching to your 25% DNA in this tape. So we did not add 12, we did not add 23, we did not have 14 when we did the manual upload. So that was a difference. So this is the same profile with those additional that we had, we were missing in our manual upload. This was a difference that TrueAllele gave us. And then we got the hit, and we send this information back to the agency and FBI, and then they found this guy moved from Cleveland back in 2011 to another state way south, and then he's having a good life. So they brought in his samples, They brought other samples first, surreptitious. Then they brought in his buccal. They indicted him, brought him back. He comes back matching with 23 log LR, 23 zeros, 24 zeros, 21 zeros. So this became the crucial piece of evidence now. This case is still in the jurisdiction, like kind of pending trial. So that is why I have to hide all the markers. So this is a perfect example of how the TrueAllele helped us in kind of overcoming the CODIS upload disparity because of the allele upload and genotype upload. So what I'm suggesting here is when we use TrueAllele or PG system, it gives you a genotype upload. When we do manual, we are simply looking at the alleles that we are uploading in the system. Let's talk on the database search. We use database search extensively on our cases. Every single case gets compared to other cases in the system. We call CCRFSL or evidence to evidence match comparison. We call evidence to our internal control. We have so far over 650 genotypes in our internal control sample. All the people in the building, people who visit our office, majority of the detectives or law enforcement people who bring in evidence, we suggest them to submit their buccal to become part of the internal control so that we can eliminate them in case we find their DNA before we upload into CODIS. And then every case gets compared from evidence to all the suspects that reside in our TrueAllele. And then we compare all the suspects to all the evidence. So this is the extensive search we do. We use report module for that, and then we go through the match, and then we compare this through CCRFSL, and then these are just the simple slides, but I will give you a demo. Let me pull the screen here and exit. I hope everybody can see my screen.
Yes, I can see viewer.
Okay, so we go through the match, and then this screen pops up. And then let's say if I'm reviewing a case or I'm putting case together, first thing that everybody does is in the review and in the compilation, we compare CCRFSL to CCRFSL, and then we have a filter that specifies how to search this. If we keep this none, then it will come back with all the different combinations, but we kind of restrict the search to a filter. And these two columns, these two headers up there, genotype 1 and genotype 2, the way I understand is these are your two buckets where you are searching for and searching against. So if I put my case in here, for example, 2025, I'm looking for 2652. That's my case, for example. I restricted with the star, and I will copy this and then ask the system to give me a comparison. The system throws that this case is matching to itself, number one. I can check quickly different items that are matching to each other. 3 is matching to 3, 4 is matching to 3, 4 is to 4, 3 to 4. That is one. And then this case is also matching to case 4442 and potentially to 3297. Is this big enough log LR for me to look at this? Probably not, because these could be mixtures. So we restrict all these, anything above 6 or 7 or 9, then only we look for. If it comes in double digits, we always look for, and then we always report this back to the agency saying, hey, look at this, your case is matching to other cases. So when we go back and do another search, let's reverse the case. now we have this search for this 2, putting this case on the second bucket for what we get. So we got that this case is matching to so many other cases in here. With 19, 19, 19, 14, 14, 12, 12, 11, 10 log LR, up to 9 log LR. All these are potential cases where this case has some common genotypes that are matching to these cases in 24 and 25. So that's a difference for and against. And the second step we do for any case, we search for IC database that tells us if there is a contamination or not. We do not restrict this with a filter. If I have to put, let's say, case number 2025, same case, 2652. If there is a contamination, it will come back and say there is a contamination or there is a match to certain profile. If there's none, it will come back and say no. Let's look for genotype. I have a particular IC that I'm interested in to see if this IC is part of any of the CCRFSL. You see the match window? So it is IC on genotype second and data on the unknowns on the genotype 1. If I search this, what we get? I get a big list of these cases where IC479 is matching to so many inferred genotypes. That's a kind of advantage. And time to time, we see contamination from our own people sometime. The person who handled the evidence, who received the evidence, sometimes some detectives, they show up on the evidence. So we have updated our policy to kind of, see how we interpret these and then how we peel them from the rest of the equation and then report on the leftover uninferred genotypes that we do. Another feature is if we have a suspect that we are trying to, we have a filter in there. Let's say, for example, I have these car theft cases. So we have a case where we, many cases, not one case. This is one of the examples where we search this suspect if he's present in other cases. Look at the stat he's giving me. And this is his single source profile. And he's involved in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 cases. So he has 15 cases starting from 2016, 2019, 2020, 2021, all the way to 2025, that he's involved in these car thefts. So this is the everyday business for us, for the people who perform these non-fatal cases, and then we kind of see these matches coming back to, and we report these out. So let's come back to my presentation again. Once we have these matches, then we have to report them out. How do we report them? Once we see the TrueAllele association between cases, we list all the cases, we list all the detectives involved in different agencies, different cases, and then we report them that there is a, during a database comparison in our TrueAllele casework system, possible association was made between about 7 cases. Then we list all the 7 cases, we list the detective, we list their agency case number, their contact information. Then they kind of, talk to each other and then say, all right, so these are the 7 different agencies where we have found the commonality in the inferred genotype. And then when we find a CODIS or a suspect matching to the TrueAllele cases, then we report a DNA profile obtained from this has hit in CODIS and has associated to other cases in our TrueAllele database system. So we report that name, and then we say, here is this guy who's sitting in particular case, and then here we have the association to other cases. And then we request them to say, hey, please note that this DNA has been associated to so-and-so, who is in this case with so-and-so agency. And then we say, Sergeant, please give us permission to use this reference. And then other detective, we say, hey, do we have permission to compare? So we do this to kind of, protect us for any future legal challenges or any of that. Then detective is telling us, yes, go ahead, you can use that profile. Detective is telling, yes, I need a comparison. So we cover these bases. So this was extent of our TrueAllele use in our casework system. I think I'll leave this for any questions for next 10 or 11 minutes. If anybody has any question, I'm open for that.